All right, let's get this show on the road, everyone. How's it going? Campaign optimization series. This is our kickoff of the entire week, and I'm so excited to be presenting with my friend Caroline Van Dyke of RollWorks today. We're going to be talking about rethinking optimization, 3 quick cross-channel tweaks to help level up your ABM now. So welcome everyone to the series. I'm so excited to see that you've all joined us today. So yeah, let's get things going. I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping slides so everybody's on the same page and knows what to do, and then we'll get things going. All right, first things first, if you're new to Demand Gen Report, welcome. We are an online media company that publishes everything from daily news, research reports, special reports, a rich menu of resources, and even a weekly email newsletter. So if you haven't done so already, join more than 75,000 subscribers to our weekly newsletter by subscribing to demandgenreport.com today. And of course, during and after today's session, please follow along and share your thoughts and feedback on Twitter using the hashtag #COSeries. All of our handles are right here on the screen. I also want to take this time to introduce a new event that we have coming up this June. And if you're here for a webinar on ABM, then you have to attend this event. It's the B2B Marketing Exchange Next Level ABM Virtual Experience. You definitely don't want to miss out on this if you want to get more insights on ABM. It's the B2B Marketing Exchange that we all know and love, obviously in a virtual setting yet again, but with an ABM twist. So registration is now open. I really hope to see you there. One more quick announcement. Grubhub is partnering with us yet again. We're so excited to be partnering with them on this special little incentive for our audience. So check your inboxes. You might have gotten a Grubhub email to access a free lunch credit. And for today's presentation, we'll be using this On24 platform. So during and after the session, you could access all the information you need on the toolbar that you see right here on your screen. We encourage you to ask our presenter questions today. We'll be doing a Q&A after the session if there's time. So to do so, simply click that Q&A widget at the top right corner of your screen. The session is slated to run about 25 to 35 minutes with about 10 minutes or so of Q&A following if we have the time. So submit those questions using that widget at any time. If we don't get to your question live, we will still follow up via email. So throw those questions in there. And then if you want to see what else we have in store for the series this year, access all of the COS sessions on the bottom left of your screen. And then on the bottom right of your screen, you'll find some additional resources that we've made available to you. The session, as always, is being recorded, and all of our attendees will receive an archive link to the session to access whenever they want and review and share with colleagues. And in addition to joining the conversation online and submitting your questions, we also welcome you to let us know how we're doing. We've put together a very brief survey that will automatically launch once this webinar session ends. And you could even pull up, complete, and submit the survey at any time during the webinar by clicking on the survey icon circled at the bottom of your screen. So please, before signing off today, take a moment to fill out this quick questionnaire so we could continue to enhance our virtual events to your liking. All right, well, I'm ready to get this going, and I am so pleased to introduce our featured speaker for today, Caroline Van Dyke of RollWorks. Caroline is a seasoned B2B content strategist with a love for actionable storytelling that helps build brands and inspire marketers. With her own experience launching a startup's very first ABM program, she now focuses on helping teams leverage account-based strategies through content at RollWorks. When she's not busy typing a million words a minute, I could definitely relate to that, she can be found getting overly competitive at trivia, hiking with her dog, or watching the latest stand-up special on Netflix. So with that said, we're in really great hands today. I'm so excited to kick things off. So Caroline, I'm passing it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Claudia, for the intro. I know I'm excited to get back out there and, win some trivia. As we're moving into 2021, we'll see. We'll keep it virtual for now. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. Super excited to kind of break down this title here. We talked about rethinking optimization. We're going to dive into 3 quick cross-channel tweaks, hacks, whatever you like to call it, to kind of take your ABM to the next level. So here just is kind of like our schedule for what we're going to chat about today. Let's dive into that. Intros. Thank you, Claudia. Already took care of that for me so that I don't have to, talk about my fun facts myself. And then we're going to first dive into ABM audiences for activation. So I kind of want to clear the air on how you need to approach these hacks, because oftentimes people just dive into, okay, I'm going to institute these few optimizations across channels and hope to see results. But you kind of got to take a few steps back sometimes. And then we'll dive into those optimization tweaks. So first we'll talk about email, kind of lighting up the inbox, taking it to the next level, not just a generic email, take yourself into the customer's point of view. We'll talk about how to kind of amplify all of these channels that are working together through digital. And then, of course, as we are at an event right now, I'm going to dive into kind of how we've been dealing with virtual events, what trends people have been seeing with sponsoring events, and how to make sure that that's working for you. And at the end, of course, you kind of want to show how this is all working to your boss, to your team, to yourself. So we're going to go through how you're going to measure kind of the short-term impact, because some people, you notice that ABM purposefully takes about as long as your sales cycles, but we're going to show how you can see indicators that ABM is really working for you and that these cross-channel tweaks are paying off. So no further ado. First things first, like I said, ABM campaign audiences. So I very much so say campaign audiences for a very clear reason. Rule number 1, what I want people to repeat after me, I promise this will not be a lesson the whole time, but we do not target everyone with everything everywhere. If there's any kind of statement or, tagline people need to wear when it comes to account-based, the point here is that we're not just doing generic marketing where we create a piece of content, we think it's fit for everyone, we just kind of wait and see. That's not what we're doing with ABM. So keeping that in mind with your tweets as well, is that depending on different pieces of data, different audiences, you'll want to approach things differently with that insight into your audience. So we're going to talk here a lot about segmentation and why these really depend on your ability to understand different data sources, where people are at in their buyer's journey, how they connect to the rest of an account, not just individuals, not just leads. So before we get started, remembering this is very important. So the next slide here, I also want to frame how these audiences kind of fit together, because the word audience has had a bit of confusion depending on what your role is in marketing, where you sit, what you view it as. So sometimes audience feels like a generic term you put on a creative brief where you're kind of talking about a persona, or it can feel like a very specific thing, such as an add-on. So here we're kind of showing the layers of how you get to ABM audiences in our perspective of a really solid and well-built ABM strategy. So you start with your target account. So many acronyms this morning already, confusing myself, but you start with your TAM, right, which is your total addressable market. And those are really based on the widest net you could cast. And then you're starting to build an ICP, which is kind of those fit-based attributes of what you think an ideal company would be for you. So that might be based on revenue, what tech stack they're using, their location, industry, all of those attributes that then you kind of put into whatever data you have available or with a vendor, and you pull out this true physical target account list, which might be, depending on your market, very large, very specific. It really depends. But for a lot of people, this target account list could be pretty big. And so from there, you're really not going to run all your programs. ABM programs aren't, okay, I have this target account list of say 1,000 to 5,000 or whatever size you have. I'm going to run all these programs equally against that. That's still not really what account-based is about. This is just your target. And then from there, you're going to siphon off into different audience segments. And so today, we're going to be really focusing on understanding that this is how you build to get to your audiences, and you need to do this groundwork. And if you haven't, there's little lighter layers of this. It doesn't always have to be overly complex, but you need to have kind of your bullseye set up. And then once you get these ad audiences or email audiences or e-gift, or of course, ideally, you're applying all these channels to one audience, you can then kind of have more specific and granular insights to choose what to toggle on and what to toggle off. So that's where your tweaks are going to come in. So moving to the next, this is important to keep in mind is how you start to configure those audiences. So you have a mix of static and dynamic audience signals here, right? So your basic target account list and audiences are really based on like fit and making sure that they're what would be a great customer for you based on different insights. And then in order to make decisions, you'll start to layer things in like intent, more top of funnel. What are people out there that you don't know that are looking for something like you? Then engagement signals, who's on your website, who's engaging, where are they in the funnel? Starting to incorporate that to then prioritize how you reach out across these channels and maybe why you pick one audience over the other to prioritize, because they're showing a lot more readiness to buy. And that's where you want to invest your efforts. So just as a little bit of like a 101 to start where we're framing things from, so that you always make sure like identifying the right accounts and the right audiences is, if not more important than whatever you're going to do to tweak programs, because you can tweak a program all you want, but if it's not to the right audience, it's not always going to pay off. All right, so with that little bit, let's dive into our tweaks. And like I say, hacks, tips, tricks, optimizations, refreshers. There's a million code names for this, but really it's just how can I make my program smarter and work for me? Even if you've done the groundwork and you have great programs set up, there's always something you can kind of adjust with new data, new information, etc. So we're going to go into our first tweak. And this is kind of a part of all these channels, again, are operating together. But the most popular for many people, marketers, we love email. As much as we sometimes love to not respond to emails as far as our day-to-day, they're very busy. We do tend to notice like what catches our eye. We should know how to get our accounts to react to our brand, engage with us. And oftentimes this is, through, of course, you have to have a marketing tech stack, but sometimes to people, the cheapest, most available channel. So as you can see, it's very saturated. American worker receives an average of 126 emails a day. It's a lot. And then 35% of business professionals, so us, check email on a phone. So for example, you're always on the go, you're always checking. And so this also matters for how you're delivering content. As we all know, anything that's super long and you're scrolling through your phone, unless you're really bored, you're not usually going to digest that information. And especially when you're competing with 126 other emails. So let's kind of get into a couple optimizations here. And this is tried and true tested. We're kind of sharing the secret sauce for us and what we've noticed. We ran internal and with our customers kind of experiments to understand what's really resonating, especially when you're segmenting these audiences, right? So you're going to have an understanding if you have, say, 6 different emails going out with the same piece of content, but to different segmented audiences, like we talked about earlier, you can really hit those pain points. But to start, our main tip here is always personalized. So anytime we've put first name very specific to here is XYZ's guide to whatever topic you're talking about, it really feels like you know them, you understand that this content is fit for them. And especially if they're on your target account list and you already know that they're in line for a service like yours. Sure, if you do that to just everyone and you personalize, it's kind of tokens won't fix everything. So you can do this Marketo, HubSpot, whatever marketing automation you're working with. And then, so this is a balance for a lot of marketers. Well, urgency is super important. You want people to feel like they need this now. Why should they open it? But we like to suggest to avoid clickbait. And for a lot of people, we know this is saying things like free or just like extremely kind of spammy. Not only will that sometimes affect deliverability, but just being honest with your audience and knowing they want to kind of be talked to in a real way, not super, super salesy. And then as far as being relevant and providing value, so put your keywords at the front of your subject line. We'll dive into this, but like you just really want to push them forward. Make sure that whatever it is, if it is an e-gift that they're getting, making sure that's at the like beginning of the subject line, not at the end where you're writing a long sentence and the value. We tend to write that way where we kind of lead up and then you get to like the value prop at the end. Well, that works in certain forms of content. It does not in subject line. So if you can even like, I bold, add the rest to the back. And then we've noticed peaking interest with numbers. So if you're doing any sort of research or here we have 3 tweaks in this, presentation right now, really put it to the front because people want to know what they're going to be getting out of it. And it just allows people to understand. So also if we have research coming out, add with some of those interesting facts off the bat, like 50% of marketers feel blank, 50% of IT professionals feel blank, go with that, or want to see like 3x increase. People really resonate with those sort of tidbits. So just make sure anytime you're trying to promote content, you understand those value props. And then as far as the format of engaging subject lines, we've noticed questions. So making sure it's kind of getting at your audience's interests, commands, lists, or teasers. So these are ways to just kind of format your content in a way that's intriguing to your audience. And then, of course, with all sort of conversion copy, shorter is sweeter. As someone, as Claudia mentioned, who likes to type a lot, it can be tough to do so, but we really notice an increase in conversion when that's the case. So again, since this is one of the most used channels, it's not just hitting send and like, okay, you really need to make sure that subject line is the first chance you're going to get someone to be roped in. And then as far as body copy, again, the theme is to keep it short. So we talk about 50 to 125 words or 4 fingers length. So if it's anything beyond that, especially if you're opening on your phone, I run into a little bit of a problem there. It's very easy to over-explain the value, but really you want to keep that concise. And again, using formatting. So italics, bolding, bullets, any way for people to scan and get that information immediately is important. And then again, you need to front load all of your information at the beginning. So just that value prop right away. Like, what are you trying to get someone to attend? What do you want them to download? What do you want them to know? And really diving in immediately, especially if you know so much about your audience, right? So if you've done all this groundwork to understand their pain points, what industry they're in, the revenue, like you understand, hey, if they're a small team, they probably have this set of issues. Get into that immediately, that emotional hook, and then what you're going to give them. And this kind of draws in just a way to QA yourself, which is important if you're marketing to someone. Take yourself into their shoes, take a step back, read that email. Would you convert on the email? You know, would you be interested in that resource? I know it depends on what persona. It's not always, you know, you're the same as your audience, but you really need to take a moment to read that instead of just kind of like going through the motions and thinking you're sending an email. Let's hope people click. So that's really for email. And I think we're going to kind of go through this one quickly because there's so many tips about email out there. But I think over time, people start to forget because it's an always on program for everyone. And we tend to send out lots of emails. This is the first place you should be reevaluating because this is kind of how you're re-engaging your audience, a lot of your nurture programs, especially as it ties into other programs that you're running. This is often our follow-up strategy. We work so hard to capture interest from people, and then sometimes email falls short, and that's just kind of what can make or break your programs. So next up, we're going to go into digital. So of course, digital can encompass so many things, but here we're kind of talking about the attention grabbing channels that you're bringing people in, whether that's display, paid social, paid search. And as we kind of note here, Gartner released a report. I know this was end of 2020 where things were kind of still up. I mean, life is always up in the air anymore, which is kind of we're on. But that digital channels accounted for almost 80% of budgets in 2020, and then 74% of CMOs expect spending more on digital advertising and 66% on paid search. So in general, this is kind of continuing to grow, and I don't think there's really a sign of anything reverting back year over year, growing in digital, and especially the push we had and the experiences we had last year. So what that also means is more people are competing against you online. You have more going on. You need to be a little bit more dynamic in what you're doing. So let's kind of dive in here on some of the optimization tweaks. And this is where the data signals come in. I'm mentioning this extremely important for people. I notice that a lot of times people will launch digital programs as a one size fits all, especially if it's your target account list. You just think, okay, like I need to have the same budget for everyone and I can launch similar messages, and it's not true. And again, you have that data at your fingertips, and especially when it comes to the buyer's journey. So what you should at least be doing is that making sure you're moving your messaging throughout the funnel. So not everyone will convert on a certain piece of content because it's top of funnel, right? So you need to really ingest that sales data. And this is the main way you can be in line with your sales team. So a lot of times in ABM, we get questions, okay, this is supposed to be sales and marketing alignment. How can I do this? I'm putting all this effort into these programs and, but a seller said it wasn't helpful. I think the key here is to align on data, the one thing you really have. So it's understanding, hey, someone's moved from just a meeting, they're actually like further into a sales conversation. So no, they don't need a blog post about like 5 ways you might be interested in XYZ. It's not going to resonate. And then you're not really using your budget efficiently and you're not having very successful programs. So this is where your data signals of intent and engagement come in as well. So once you understand where they are in the sales stage, understand what they're interested in topics, you can get extremely segmented in the kind of ads you're running. And it doesn't mean you need to have 100 different things going on. That's not the case. But you just need to start small and at least have a couple buckets where you've made sure you're meeting the buyer's journey. So for example, some things people don't think about, especially with ABM, you want to be full life cycle. You can create audiences for renewal. So if you know there's a list of at-risk customers and you notice through intent that they're searching for competitors, you can run a very targeted, and this is, I mean, not losing even a handful of customers is so extremely valuable to the business that these are the areas of opportunity you need to be digging into to up level whatever you're doing digital, right? Just saying digital is too simple. There's so much more you could be doing. So here's kind of an example just of how we look at the journey, right? You have someone who's researching, moving to unaware, aware, and of course your definitions for this can differ. They're engaging with you. And then of course, purchase, great. And a lot of people think that's where things end. And then you're actually moving into, you might want to make sure people are adopting your solution. You need to make sure you expand within the account or that you renew the account areas that you can tap into for digital. And if your people get typically stuck in 1 or 2 of these buckets, once they do that, they kind of, move along. But this is a way to really dive in. And again, with competitors being more digitally focused as well, if you're one of the only ones doing kind of these renewal campaigns, there's a chance that they won't be going to a competitor. So this is an area to really leverage. And then, of course, once you're doing all of this, you're putting all of your effort into designing ads, the right copy. You're like, wow, great, getting so many clicks. People are interested. They're coming in. Okay, but what are you serving to them once they get there, right? And so I think this is where it can be a dead end. And it really doesn't have to be that difficult, but you need to make sure that, of course, your messaging is mapping to the ad and the offer makes sense in coordination with this. So if the copy is pretty light level and then you're pushing someone to a demo request, you're probably not going to see a lot of activity. And then you also want to give people an option for something else if they don't feel like doing whatever direct, CTAs on that page. So this is where conversational marketing comes in heavily. We've noticed a lot of success in making sure that you're just ready to have a conversation with someone in case they wanted to bounce or if they do another action on your site. Of course, that's what you prefer. The main point of digital attraction is just bringing people to hopefully engage with something that resonates with them. And if it isn't exactly what you'd hoped, you'd rather still retain that attention than let it bounce and have a negative experience. So a way to kind of foolproof that, and this ties back again into the buyer's journey point above, we really try to stick to a simple formula if possible. Every team is different. You have, different stages. You define things differently. You have different audiences. That's totally fair. But what we're really noticing here is that you want to have realistic expectations for what program you're setting up, understanding where they should be going after their click, and then what that should be converting into. So if you're trying to fix for something very specific, you should be setting up a program working back from your KPIs, right? So if I'm trying to build site traffic, it's really my main focus right now is awareness. And I should not be putting up like demo request, ROI calculator ads to that certain audience, right? So that's the same as when you're here, when you're trying to move people down, moving to evaluation, you're understanding that also your conversions might start to be a little bit less, the volume might go down, but that is the point. So I think this is just a really good way to wrap your head around how digital should be working for you and that it maps along with the rest of your programs back to a funnel and back to moving people through stages. So here, especially, there's certain tactics and certain channels that we've noticed work better depending on your goals as well. So this is something to follow up with. We can send this out. It's definitely an area I think just most marketers should be auditing their programs, because also for digital, we've noticed a lot of times you have programs up and running for a while and it's kind of working for you, but then you forget to recheck what's going on or what do you have that's new, what can you put in here, look at the data, see areas you can optimize. So this is where you should be kind of cleaning house a little bit, do a little spring cleaning, we like to call it. Great. And then tweak number 3. So I call these events on purpose, not just a typo, but we've noticed a lot. I actually did a little bit of research recently, and as we're at an event right now, kind of reframing and reinvesting in the success of all of this is like super important. We've noticed some very mixed emotions around virtual events, and I think some of this is also in contrast to in-person events. There's a lot of feelings on both sides of the fence of what they love, what they hate about both. And for example, some people are feeling underwhelmed by some of virtual events, but then also most marketers are really enjoying not having to throw tons of budget at travel goes with that. And I even have a stat around people think they're actually consuming more content at virtual events. I think it's because it's readily available. It's always sent out. There's just so much that people are putting together. And so that there's also a positive, aside from just attending events, we're talking to, marketers who are looking to harness, more contacts, more people in their database, more accounts that are engaged. So with virtual events, we've noticed that rather than needing to meet people on the floor and grab business cards, while those engagements were really important, you're actually getting and reaching a far wider net of folks through virtual events. And so like 70% of the marketers we talk to, they're able to get like full lists of everyone who is interested in an event, which is typically a little bit more top of funnel, right? These people maybe didn't completely engage with your session, but they're curious in the topic that we're at. So from that point of view, if you're getting so much more out of this at the outset and you're investing less money, the ROI here is something to really captivate. And so we're going to dive into what you need to do first, though, because this word full list can get people to feel a little bit like, I thought like ABM was supposed to be about value, not just volume. And so that's where it's really important once you've, captured this list of attendees or registrants to kind of fact check yourself. So I'm pulling it back to my intro here. When you get the list, you're not going to just blast the whole list. Even if you have those great email tips and you've got them and you can run digital against them as follow-up, that's not what we're looking for here. We really want to make sure that you're mapping that back to a target account list, or say you even have an ICP. Everyone's at a different stage in their ABM journey, right? You want to be making sure that these folks that you're getting a list of, you kind of map them back to accounts. And that is then your list from there, from the event. And then like we talked about, because they might not have exactly engaged with your content, some might have, those will fall into a different bucket. These might be a little bit of colder contacts. They need a little bit more warming up. And that's completely fine because you're getting such a bigger pool of high fit accounts than you typically would have before. And then you have the opportunity to re-engage them with this content that you're already generating, right? So there's so much effort put into these virtual events. So many great speakers. We're noticing it's crazy what it's gotten people to do, how many amazing hosts there are. So you can kind of recapture and reconfigure that content with your sales team and make sure that you're bringing those touch points and bringing it back with all this cross-channel marketing. And so what you can do here, again, like I said, you're going to map this back to your ICP, your TAL, get that list. But then it's not really over there. It might be for some marketers, right? You're like, okay, this is a small enough list and it's really targeted. It's just what I need. And I'm going to, run this great campaign against this list. But for some marketers, that list might still be too big, or your resources just aren't, you're in a small team, or just your budget. You always want to be super smart about it. So you're not going to try to throw the same budget again at just a whole list. Again, it's all about sub-segmentation. It's about understanding readiness to buy signals so that you're really targeting the right people at the right time and putting your resources in the right place. As marketers, we all know like resources fluctuate in and out. And you always want to be doing the smartest thing and seeing the best ROI. So this is where those fit and engagement signals will come in. First, you can do machine learning scoring your accounts. So this is kind of based on fit, understanding based on closed won accounts in the past, how likely are some of these accounts that were at the event going to be customers for us? And that automatically adds a ranking to them. You're like, okay, I can see very clearly, here are some accounts that are in the green. Like, wow, we really need our marketing budget and our sales team to like fire up under these accounts. We're like, wow, yes, like please be our customers. We will do what it takes. Then there might be some that are lower on the, totem pole, but that doesn't mean that you're not following up. It's just, you might be putting like, okay, we'll do like a little bit lighter of a program, or I'm going to spend a little bit less time and energy with my sales team, making sure we get that outreach completely perfect. And then from there, you're going to layer on intent signals. So, okay, they're keywords related to us that they're really interested in. Also use that for the personalized outreach that you're going to do with your sales team. put that into the ads that you're doing, very direct content copy, and then engagement signals. So ideally, some of these accounts, because they were already in your database, will like have already been engaging with you, and you might find that some of these are further along in the funnel, and so you can talk to them a little bit differently than you were talking to some of these accounts that you haven't spoke to before. And then so once you have these lists, right, understanding, of course, from here, we kind of circle back to these engagement channels, and you'll have new audiences to engage across. So we'll notice that you can then make sure that your sales team has these like flags, you're aligned on it, you'll be reporting on the same information. And then you'll also want to expand within these accounts. So great, you had one attendee who was from one of your accounts. Now you could probably run some targeting toward them across the entire buying committee and get exposure throughout that entire account. So what might start as like winnowing things down is then going to expand, but with like a very clear laser focus on who you want to be responding. So these are a few things to take into consideration, channel by channel, kind of just getting like real quick, dirty, this is what you need to do, what you need to cut out, what you need to start doing. It's not miracle work, but it really is sometimes just fact checking ourselves and thinking like, oh, this is like simple, but I have not been doing it, and we could be spending our money and our time so much better. So just to kind of wrap that together, of course, all these channels are going to work together. You know, the triple whammy, you're like going to an event, you're going to follow up, ads, email your audiences, and you're going to measure that way. And so I think taking the conversation from how are we going to measure these small tweaks on a day-to-day basis, whether you're really closely involved with digital or the email or whatnot, and you're reporting on your like day-to-day success, you're going to want to bubble these up over time into how is this working in my entire account-based strategy. So I'm going to kind of talk you through that here, because no one wants to do all of this work without results here. So if we go into a way I like to frame measuring ABM is short and long-term impact. So it's kind of like you think you're starting a job. There's like 30, 60, 90 days. How am I doing? And then with ABM, like there's long-term. Really what you're trying to do is speed up a sales cycle. And for a lot of people, your sales cycle is, who knows, months and months. It really depends on the person, but especially in B2B, we're looking at long sales cycles. So to see something really work and come to fruition around generating revenue, it's going to naturally, purposefully take some time. But that does not mean that you should not be looking at early indicators of program success. And therefore, over time, this is where the optimizations come in. So that's why we're making ABMing in and not just looking at the big picture of revenue. Although, again, we never forget about revenue when it comes to ABM. So exactly, volume to value. Here we talk about with our lists, and why I've kind of mentioned how you move from a total addressable market all the way down to campaign audiences. You really want to be doing all of these levels of kind of, I think about it, shaving away to make sure that you have value. So you can start with anything, like big numbers are intriguing, everyone loves it. But when you really dive in and look behind it, a lot of those things were kind of empty, not a lot of value. Everyone loves to call it vanity metrics, but that's where ABM is coming in. We're really going to talk about what actually is making an impact. Let's just be honest with each other and like move on and really make sure that we're driving what matters for sales. And then again, accounts versus people. And this isn't to say that with account-based, people will always matter. People are the ones opening your email. The company isn't opening the email. But what you're doing is tracking progress within the account, because we know there's not just one buyer, there's not just one person involved. It takes a whole team to purchase, especially a lot of the products and services that more complex B2B organizations are offering. And also over time, that allows you to kind of just see how things are moving versus just, okay, acquired one lead, now on to the next thing. It's really a full cycle process. And then ultimately, this all leads to, like we talked about, end of day, revenue impact, huge, really important for just go-to-market teams, period. I like to think of ABM, it's not just marketing, sales, it's customer success. It's how are we taking our product to market? How are we making sure we're strategically meeting the needs of our audience? And that should generate, obviously, more revenue. So again, let me talk about metrics moving through the account journey. We like to visualize it this way, just watching where people progress. And there might be moments where someone goes from aware, and then they're kind of not on your site for a while. You're bringing them back. So those are a lot of our patterns here, right? We're going to try to track things as they move and then make program decisions based on if someone is in one of these stages over the other. So if you notice you have should I say bloated funnel? I don't know. We've all had a long, lockdown. But if there's a ton of people in the aware stage and you're just noticing there's a block and it's not moving to engage, that's where you'll take these tweaks and make sure to focus maybe on that part of the buyer journey. So if you have limited budget, you're going to be like, okay, I need to focus on this area today. I can't fix the world. I can't fix my entire funnel today, but I'm going to try to make progress on this area, the specific business metric I'm looking to pull out of it. And so here are some of those baseline metrics you'll be looking at that are more campaign day-to-day. How am I going to move people through my funnel, right? So you've got things like, how many accounts have you reached? How many accounts have visited your site? How many accounts are engaged? So moving from just visiting and viewing to really engaging with your content offers. Then unique visitors. This is kind of getting back to the people versus accounts, page views. These are all the kind of things that are really important. And I hate for people to overlook in ABM where we just talk about high-level metrics because, again, those are what you look for to prove the value of ABM, but this allows you to make smart decisions day to day to make your ABM programs run really well to eventually get those. So here's some more campaign metrics, right? You can think about how many accounts you've targeted over time, how many responses you've gotten within that target account list, how many meetings you've booked. So this is moving into our sales team now. We're like, you should be partnering with your SDR team, your business development team, understanding how these actions you're taking, especially with things like virtual events, which are heavily sales influenced. How are these things translating and measuring that success? And then ultimately here we have our beautiful picture of what we should be moving towards. So doing all of these things, these tweaks, understanding our audience, we should be able to sit back and watch our accounts progressing the way they should throughout this funnel, all the way through retention, et cetera. And then you're able to see revenue, lift, everything is looking the direction that you want it to look. And so this is kind of how I like to connect all things ABM. You got to start at the bottom sometimes. There's little tweaks behind the scenes, but ultimately you need to have all your foundation set up and really be bought in on ABM for all of this to work together. So with that, hopefully I gave you a quick, fast, here's how to optimize, here's what to do. And we have so many more resources we could share with y'all about how to do this in nitty-gritty steps, and hopefully we can follow up with those. But as far as I'm considered, we got a little check mark for some optimizations today. And I just want to say thank you for joining me. It's been very fun. So off to Claudia for, I think we have some questions that have come in.
Yes, thank you so much, Caroline. That was awesome. I love the quick hitting, get to the point. It's my favorite type of presentation. So great job there. And it did spark some really good questions. But before I get to those, I just want to remind everyone once again to please share your thoughts and feedback with us before logging off today. You can click that survey icon and do it now, or wait till the session ends and it'll automatically come up. And then one more quick heads up. Obviously, I mentioned it earlier, but if we don't get to your question live right now, then we will definitely follow up via email. So don't worry and keep those questions coming. All right, Caroline, let's go. First one, what are the best follow-up channels for virtual events that help sales?
Great question. And of course, I mentioned email and digital, but I think going deeper than just that follow-up, it's being really in sync on understanding and breaking out what that audience engaged with during the virtual event, and then parsing those out into different outreach with your SDR team. So that's something we've worked on really closely with our team before, where you might want to just specifically be like, we noticed you asked this question, and have your SDR team in that email be very personal, and at the same time, be running some sort of digital campaign. And then, as this event has done very well, one thing that we didn't touch on, people love to eat, throw them a snack. We're at home, we're tired, we're sitting through events, having something like an e-gift to have lunch on you while you're watching like the pre-recordings, re-recordings, whatever you're doing, kind of sweetening the deal for people. And then I think the key is to not just let things lag. So a lot of times you think you did this outreach, the week after, and then you're on to the next one, right? But like we talked about, this is a funnel and it's going to take some time. So kind of having that plan, like say every few weeks, here's what our nurture plan is for this audience. So mapping that out with your team and letting them know that you plan to support this audience going forward. And it's not just a one-hit wonder kind of situation. That's really important to build trust with sales as well.
Awesome. And I could definitely back up that, meal-based type of incentive. It's been working very well for us at Demand Gen Report with our partnership at Grubhub. And no, this webinar was not sponsored by Grubhub. We just, food, everybody loves food, right? Yeah. All right. Second one, how do I prioritize budget against so many channels when we're on a lean team?
Yes, that is a great question. And I think I touched on a little bit. As marketers, I think even you can go from a lean budget to a bigger budget pretty quickly. Things move. So I think the one point I made about what you can do to your event lists actually applies at the outset as well for any sort of ABM program. Ideally, you're doing some sort of prioritization and tiering of your lists. Very rarely can a team afford to treat an entire target account list equally. It's pretty crazy, right? If you have 7,000 accounts, you're not going to do every single amazing touch to that account. You're going to need to prioritize based on what I talked about, which essentially first step that should really clean up your list is some sort of matching against your existing database and knowing which accounts have closed in the past that are most similar, and then really focusing on that top tier. And then layering in over time these other like dynamic signals of topics that people are interested in, who's engaging with your site right now. So if you really need, for example, let's understand your business problems as well. Like if you're having a problem where you're not closing a lot of deals, but you have like a ton in the upper funnel, okay, for right now, we can focus on this segment and drive really specific programs to people at that sales stage. So it might be that you can't do everything all at once. I think that's a big thing that people need to understand is you really want to obviously be like managing things equally throughout your funnel, but you might then prioritize a little bit more towards those people who say like have seen a demo request in the past 30 days, have engaged with X, Y, and Z, and just really drive your budget there. So I think it doesn't have to be permanent also. So understanding that this is maybe a phase, we're doing this program for 2 months and being okay, like, okay, now we're going to move on to the next thing. So I think you really need to compartmentalize and be able to be really reactive. I kind of said something about being like a living, breathing being. Your marketing isn't a like complete set it and forget it, but there are like a couple things that you can do that are set and forget. But I would say this is how you manage having a bit of a like flexible budget.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. I think we have time for one more. How can I clean up handoff to our SDR team?
I'm going to take this as maybe we're talking about typical lead or account scoring and kind of understanding when your sales team should be following up, when they should kind of take their space, or maybe it's data-based. I'm not totally sure, but I'm going to say it really helps with this traditional understanding of sales handoff is that we're trying to kind of break down the idea that there is some sort of volleyball net where marketing has some sort of hot lead, you pop it over, and there's like a clean cut, and sales is like, great, I'm going to go run with this. A sports metaphor. And I don't think I'm that great at sports, so I don't know if that one worked. But I'll keep trying. Essentially, ABM is supposed to make sure that marketing and sales are really on the same page throughout the whole process, because essentially you should be pre-qualifying most people that you're reaching out to from a marketing standpoint. So at that point, really your sales team, which would have been traditionally like further down the funnel, are kind of starting out at a similar space with you. So I think it's best to like re-understand these roles with your sales team. If you really feel like there's some sort of like clear handoff, there might be a little bit of confusion around your understanding of ABM or how your sales team is working together. So same target account list. And then from there, you can come up with rules of engagement, that don't treat every single person who comes through. This with ABM, you should be really reflecting on this is a combined strategy. We aren't, separate teams. We're not handing hot potatoes to each other. So I think that's just a good way to restart it. And then of course, there's a lot of other advice out there we can give if you want to move into literal ways of following up.
Awesome. All right. Good stuff. Thank you so much. I'm going to top it off there with the Q&A because we're coming down to the 45-minute mark and want to give people some extra time on their calendars. But thank you so much, Caroline, for this awesome session. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Of course, if we didn't get to your question live, we will follow up via email. And now, just a quick heads up, our next session, the power of meal-based marketing in the digital era. Yes, we're going to just keep the food conversation going. It's coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern today, so we hope to see you there. And yeah, that's a wrap, folks. First COS session down, a bunch more to go, so stick around for the week. And yeah, Caroline, thanks again. Thanks to everyone out there, and take care.